The telescope will take a month to get to its final destination, and 2 months later will begin its 6-year survey. The mission of the telescope is to scour billions of galaxies, covering more than 1/3 of the sky, by pinpointing the location and shape of galaxies up to 10 billion light-years away. Scientists hope to learn more about the dark energy and dark matter that make up most of the universe and keep it expanding. The science director of the European Space Agency says right now, scientists only understand about 5% of the universe. That includes stars, planets, and us. The rest is still a mystery, and they hope this mission will help push us forward and maybe discover what's hidden in galaxies far, far away. Brian Van Miller, CBS News.
Rutherford Issues with Brian Barrett on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and streaming at WGNSradio.com.
Rutherford Issues, powered by Middle Tennessee Electric, MTE's Sharing Change. That's their charitable foundation. Well, it's funded by members who round up their electric bills to the nearest dollar each month as a donation and support hundreds of nonprofits. Find out more at sharingchange.org. Time to talk with John Mitchell. John is the executive director of the American Red Cross Heart of Tennessee chapter. And John, I'm sure this month of, since the last time we talked, June and July, have been pretty busy, as each month seems to be for you at the Red Cross.
Yeah, sure has, Brian. We, one of the things that we do on a regular basis is just make sure we're very purposeful in thanking our volunteers. June, we had a volunteer appreciation event out at Barfield Park. It was a really well-attended event, and it was really nice to just stop and just thank the volunteers that do the work of the Red Cross. As you may have heard me say before, 90% of our workforce is volunteers, so we just can't thank them enough. And they do a wide amount of jobs in the Red Cross, if you will, and we're always looking for more. So we would love for people to take a look at us and see if they could give a little bit of their time or talent to help others in their greatest time of need.
We'll talk quite a bit here on the show about some opportunities, volunteer opportunities. If you're thinking, you know what, maybe that's something for me, and we'll just kind of tease with some of the volunteer opportunities that are there. I did want to just touch on, because every time when I hear American Red Cross, Heart of Tennessee chapter, I also think about blood and blood donations, and it's summertime, and so I'm sure that there's always seems to be a critical need of blood in the summer.
There always is. It doesn't, stay on everybody's mind, and so we like to remind everybody of that need. And to that point, you can assist in that process in several ways. One, you can, of course, give blood, and go to redcross.org and look for various donation sites. You can set up your own donation site if you have access to a church or a workplace or somewhere where there's a lot of foot traffic, and you want to put together a blood drive. You could call me, and I'll connect you with Gene Baker, who's our local representative. We're constantly looking for that. So, there's opportunities at our facility at 501 Memorial Boulevard, which is our fixed site, but we do that anywhere where we can get, at least 20 people together to give blood. That makes for a successful blood drive. And, as we were saying, some people say, well, I'd like to give blood, but due to different reasons, I'm not able to. But if you understand that importance, you can even help out as we call it biomed, or a blood donation ambassador, somebody that could help when we do the blood drive. They could just be there to help do the intake and process people that are coming in, maybe make reminder calls. Ironically, one of our bigger needs right now for volunteerism is what we call biomed transport. So once the blood is collected at the Murfreesboro fixed site, that blood has to be moved from Murfreesboro to our processing location in Nashville. And so people can come on board and get trained and go through a couple, processes to know how to do that, and just help that whole process. So even if you can't give blood, there's ways to assist if that's something you're passionate about.
We've got John Mitchell joining us today. He is the executive director of the Heart of Tennessee chapter of the American Red Cross, and try to keep that first and foremost on the mind of folks. If you can give blood and have that opportunity to do so, it's very easy, super simple, and even have the fixed site here, so that can help as well. But you were talking about 90% of the work that goes on with the American Red Cross is done by volunteers. And John, I wonder if you might share some different volunteer opportunities, especially if there are some here locally.
Absolutely. One of the most reoccurring things we do, we'll talk about responding to disasters. But the biggest reoccurrence in a disaster that we do on a very regular basis is respond to home fires. And so, we're constantly looking for people that could come on board, and if they've got a little bit of time, they can sign up to be a disaster action team member. That's when you go through some training and you learn how to assist people that have just went through that very horrific and terrible day when their home burns and they're trying to figure out what their next step is. So when I talk about training, there's different levels of engagement with the people. For one thing, you could be a general volunteer and just be there to help, and maybe put a Red Cross blanket around somebody and just be there to let them talk. But if you get into it a little bit farther, we need people to get trained to learn how to do assessment on, the situation. And at that point, they can actually give them some debit card that is loaded with money for them to take that next step. That next step could be, hey, I need to get in the hotel that night. Hey, I need to go to Walmart and get some clothes and some general necessities. And so when you're handling the donor dollar, that's, the money that people are giving us to help people in those times, there are certain processes you have to do, and that's part of the training. So that sounds really intense, and it can be one of our more involved volunteer opportunities. But it can also be somebody that says, I can give them my time, and I just want to come into the office and maybe I can help you make phone calls, or, just we can kind of cater. If you have the passion for the Red Cross, we can find a spot for you. There is some training involved, but there's also opportunities to kind of allow people to help people. Our main goal is to alleviate human suffering. Mm-hmm. And if you have a passion for that, we can kind of take your personal situation and help you find a certain niche. So like I said, one of our bigger needs is disaster action team members. Outside of that, you got to talk about our different, programs. So we do have, as I mentioned before, the blood services. So blood transport, somebody that's an ambassador that helps set up blood drives. Then you can move over to our training side. So if you're interested in learning more about helping people know about our trainings, which would be, of course, CPR, training, babysitting, there's certain ways to help with that. But, in the training arena, we have many kind of self-ready, trainings that people can go and do in their church or at the Senior Citizen Center that are just be Red Cross ready. How do you get your family ready to be prepared for a disaster? We have training opportunities for people to go into the schools and teach kids how to be prepared at their age-appropriate level. So we can kind of take what your interest is, do an onboarding process, and kind of gauge what you like to do, and put you in that arena.
John, you've mentioned some that are pretty intensive in terms of time, and then there are others that maybe if you have one day a week for a couple of hours and can come in and help make phone calls and things. So it sounds like the volunteer opportunities are pretty vast in terms of time, and with working with volunteers, time is a big commodity.
Well, yeah, and thanks for saying that, Brian, because that reminds me to tell people, maybe clear up some misconceptions. So let's say, for instance, somebody comes on board and they want to help in that disaster action team process. Well, first and foremost, after they go through the training, they are going to put down some days that they may be available to respond to the calls that come in. They're not obligated to show up. I mean, you have regular work obligations and family obligations. So basically, you just put yourself available for, potentially filling a shift. But then we have somebody that's called a duty officer, and that duty officer's goal is they never leave the house. So their goal is, once we get a call from the local fire department saying we are responding to a family that's just, had a home fire, they go down to the call list and they, call people to say, hey, are you in a position, I see that you're available to serve on this day. And then they put that team together that goes out. But that person never leaves the home, and they do all the logistics from their site. They're
kind of like a dispatcher,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, I think once people get into our trainings, they think, oh, my gosh, if once I put myself down for a Saturday, but then I get called into work, what am I going to do? You have the right of refusal. But that gets to the point that's why we need more volunteers. So if we're needing to, we're committed to respond to these disasters. So, we may need, 10 people on the roster versus 5 to make sure that we're always, getting somebody out there. And here's the reality of it. We have some awesome volunteers that have been doing awesome work for years. A lot of them, continue to go, and they don't turn it down, but we're always worried about them getting burnt out, So the more we can kind of share the wealth, if you will, or give people more opportunities, the more we can keep some of our volunteers that just amaze me, honestly, what they do and the time that they do cover. We can kind of let them, not cover everything and have some a little more personal time, but they're so passionate, they're not going to turn it down. We just want to bring more people on board and make sure it's not overburdening for some of our volunteers. And but yeah, that's the process, is get you in and see what fits your personal lifestyle at this day, and then go from there.
John, got just a couple of seconds, but I guess the easiest way is to check the Red Cross website, call the office if they want to be able to volunteer.
Yeah, and feel free to call my cell phone personally. It's 615-651-3405. But as you mentioned, Brian, the website is really the best way. If you go to redcross.org and you go through the part where it says, yes, I want to volunteer, once you fill in that information and you show your zip code, it will trickle down to Tennessee. We're the Tennessee region, and then we are the Heart of Tennessee chapter within the Tennessee region. And our team will get a hold of that and give you calls, and we go through an onboarding process where we try to help assess what your interest is and where our biggest needs are. So whether you call my cell phone or you start on the Red Cross site, you will get to our people locally here at the Red Cross Heart of Tennessee chapter in Murfreesboro.
John Mitchell joining us today on Rutherford Issues.
Hello friends, Lenny Farmer with Jennings & Ayers Funeral Home. More than I can count, we have